This is the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for avid readers and passionate fans of gay romance fiction. Each week, we bring you exclusive author interviews, book recommendations, and explore the latest in gay pop culture.
Welcome to a bonus episode of the Big Gay Fiction Podcast. I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com, and with me as always is my co-host and husband, Will Knaus.
In this very special episode, we're featuring the rom-com analysis Paralysis, and we are very excited to welcome the film's co-writer, director, co-executive producer, and co-star Jason T. Gaffney, along with his co-star, Mr. Kevin Held. Thanks, guys, so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
You had so many titles.
I know.
I just had the one.
It's a very important title.
I'm good with it. I'm fine with it. That sounds exhausting. I just had to show up.
Okay, Mr. Multi-Hyphenate. Jason, we're going to start with you. Give us an idea of what analysis paralysis is all about.
Basically, Analysis Paralysis is a romantic comedy where a young man, Tyler O'Connor, struggles with severe anxiety to the point where he has to play out every possible scenario before he can make a decision on how to proceed. And he finally reaches rock bottom, and with the help of his therapist, he pursues dating Shane Revere, who's Kevin, and basically hijinks ensue, and we get to watch all the hilarious craziness that happens between the two of them and all the possible ways the dating could go right and go wrong. And you get a happily ever after.
Mm-hmm. Oh, spoiler alert.
It's a rom-com.
Yeah, if it's a rom-com, it has to end that way. Otherwise, everybody goes,
Sure.
huh?
Yeah.
Sure.
What was the inspiration for you as the co-writer for Analysis Paralysis?
Well, honestly, I love making movies. I love telling stories. I love to act. And I was talking with my dad, and I was trying to figure out a way to make a film for a very small budget. And we were talking back and forth, and he said, it would be really cool if you could do a scene in the same location and kind of repeat the scene a bunch of times. And we started talking about like how that would come about. And then he mentioned that a family friend of mine had a condition called analysis paralysis, where he can get paralyzed when he's trying to make a business decision. And so I Googled it, I looked it up, I talked to my sister-in-law about it, about what the mental condition really is and how it's really just extreme anxiety. And then I was like, let's do this. This is going to be so much fun. The comedy possibilities are endless. And so it just kind of took off from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really hilarious. We talked about the movie back in episode 138, way back in May, because you hooked us up with a screener copy of it. And it is a riot, the number of permutations you go through on some of this stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's funny because the first rendition of the film was actually an hour and 45 minutes, and we cut it down to an hour 30. So there's about 15 minutes of footage that's just wonderful footage that didn't really further the story and help the story progress. And so there's funny stuff that got cut that I wish we could have kept. It didn't fit in this particular thing. And so I'm hoping to release that kind of like bonus deleted scenes at some point. And but I'm really proud of my
prestige DVDs for.
Yes, totally.
Now, you've got a big thing coming up here on February 1st, as you're going to get a big theatrical screening 2-week run in Palm Springs. What are the details on that?
Basically, let me find my little...
It's super exciting. We're going to be playing at the Camelot Theater for 2 weeks in Palm Springs, starting February 1st. And Jason and I are going to be there for screenings and Q&As and after screening stuff and whatever, parties or whatever, if anyone wants to invite us places, I don't know.
Yeah.
For February 1st and 2nd, we're gonna be there on both of those days. You know?
Yeah, it's basically the Palm Springs Cultural Center's Cinema Diverse kind of best of the fest, and they invite a couple films back who film were fan favorite, like festival favorites, and so we're really psyched.
Yeah, I've never had a film in a real theatrical run before. So that's, I mean, I've been in film festivals and stuff. It's played on actual screens, but not for a run. So that's a first for me, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, and on February 1st, there's special tickets to meet Kevin and me before the screen.
Oh, I want one.
Yeah. What? You want to meet me?
Yeah.
So you can find that information. I guess it's Eventbrite. If you Google Analysis Paralysis Open Night Reception and Film Screening, and you should be able to find that. On my mom's website, SuzanneBrockman.com, she has a link to it under news.
Yeah, and we'll have a link to it in our show notes as well to make it super easy for folks.
Excellent.
So that's on eventbrite.com.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think you can also go to www.camelottheaters.com to get more info about getting tickets for the rest of the run as well.
Yes, I was there earlier today, in fact, checking it all out, just to see what was there.
Great. The link is live. Good. You've done more research than I have on it.
What do you think it is about Analysis Paralysis that ignited it to be such a fan favorite to get this run?
So when I wrote Analysis Paralysis, one of the things that was very important to me was to write a LGBTQ film, a feature, where the leads happened to be gay, but it wasn't about them being gay. I wanted it to just be gay guys in the real world existing like we do every day of our lives without needing to focus specifically on that point. And mind you, there's a lot of very gay stuff in it. There's a love scene that's very homosexual.
Well, not to give too much away, but there's two men in it.
Yes. Two men that kiss every now and then, among other things. And I talked to a couple of the people afterwards, and there were several gentlemen who said roughly the same thing, which was it was really refreshing to see a movie that took place after the coming out, because coming out stories are still really important in this day and age. There's still a lot of places where coming out really matters, and there needs to be the resources for people to do that. But there's now there's been a lot of progress in our society, and there's now a need to see the story that happens after, to see gay people of all shapes and sizes living their best life after they have come out and become open about who they are.
Mm-hmm. What can people do to maybe encourage more of this to happen, like to get it to their theater or something along those lines?
I think they shouldn't. They should just book us at their theater. Making a movie is really hard. We've already got one.
Basically, if people want to go to their local art houses or local theaters, they can put in a request for the movie, and they can reach out to us. I'm very accessible at jasontgaffney@gmail.com.
Sorry, he's very accessible.
Or you can tweet me at at Jason T. Gaffney, whatever it is for Twitter. And basically, with art houses, there's a lot of, like, from what I've been led to believe with the art house scene that we've been researching, there's a lot of, like, what the audience in the area wants, they'll bring in. And what a dream for me for the future would be to make these movies and then travel with my cast around the country to the art houses and do Q&As and meet people around the country and screen.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you've had a couple other go-rounds at festivals, too, because your premiere was actually in Chicago, if I recall correctly.
Premiere was actually in Palm Springs, but the follow-up was Chicago.
Ah, okay.
And there was one in San Antonio,
right,
which was exciting. We didn't get to go to that one,
right,
but we did jet set to Chicago, and it was wild.
It was great. Yeah.
There was 6 of us on a plane. I mean, there were more people on the plane than 6.
We didn't charter a plane.
Can you imagine? I'm making a movie for $5, but we're going to charter a plane.
That's why the budget was so small. We spent everything on transportation.
That's where all that Kickstarter money went.
Yeah. Thanks.
No food for anyone. No rest. The camera's just running. No, it was wild. It was we got to go. Matt came with us, my parents, and Kevin's husband Nick was with us, and it was just awesome.
It was great. Yeah.
another really warm and receptive audience. And I got to tell you, when we saw it for the first time in Palm Springs with that audience, the first 2 minutes I was sweating profusely, and my hands were really clammy, and I was white knuckling my husband Matt's hand. And I talked to my dad afterwards, and I was like, "Oh man, it was like 10 minutes before the first laugh," and he was like, "Calm down, it was 5 minutes."
He had a stopwatch.
Well, my dad the next morning got up, watched the movie, and because he was kind of taking notes throughout the movie to see when the laughs came, and he found out that it was actually 2 minutes in, and by 10 minutes into the movie, there was a laugh a minute for the rest of the movie in the theater. And once that started, I got a little more relaxed, and then I got really anxious again. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster. It's a laugh a minute. There's your tagline.
Yeah, perfect.
You'll feel great. You feel anxious.
I mean, yeah, you don't want to go too far into the context of it's a roller coaster for the filmmaker wondering if anyone's going to like it. And it's a laugh a minute, and we scientifically prove it because we had a stopwatch and a pad of paper.
That's right. If your dad still has the notes, you have it like to prove.
Totally.
Yes.
It was great. He said, it was amazing. He got very scientific about it.
He
Very
did.
cool.
Now, of course, there's a way that people can get DVDs even now. In fact, I have my Kickstarter DVD right here.
Hey!
Yes, Kickstarter DVD.
Hey, that's us.
Yes, it is.
But
Yes, if you go to IndieGoGo.
we have that link
you
in the
can-
show notes, too.
Yeah,
Thank
if you go
you.
to IndieGoGo to help support Out of Body, the next film, you can grab a Kickstarter/IndieGoGo copy of Analysis Paralysis before we close up shop for the Out of Body IndieGoGo.
Mm-hmm.
How long is that going to be running for?
Probably until we finish up Out of Body, and then we'll be closing that down and starting up the next one. And I bet you there'll be Analysis Paralysis DVDs available for the third movie as well.
I hope not, because we're going to sell out.
Oh yeah, well
There you
hopefully
go.
by then distribution.
That's right.
Cool. Getting back to Analysis Paralysis, Jason, your main character essentially suffers from the title affliction, but Kevin, your character Shane, is essentially the object of Jason's affection. How did you get involved in the project?
On this specific project, I came sort of with it. I think that part was written for me.
It was.
It's hard for me to say that, but it's true. But it's because Jason and I have already worked together for years, to the time when we came to this film. We met on a student film at a Christian university like 800 years ago.
Spoilers, I didn't know it was a Christian university.
I didn't know it was a student film.
This just tells you nothing but the top of the line.
Yeah, it was super professional. But the best thing that came out of that experience was I got to meet Jason, and we just by the first day of filming, we were just fast friends already, and just we were making each other laugh constantly on set, and then our friendship grew out of that. And then we've been able to work. I was able to work on his web series, The Comedy Minute. And so in little ways over the years, we've gotten to work together and become close friends. And then when this film was coming together, he said, I've got this thing that we're doing and I want you to do it. So it's nice to be offer only.
Yeah. And I want to add something too, because I can boast about him easier than he can boast about himself.
Right.
It is really rare when you can find someone who is so incredibly funny and also knows their lines, and shows up and can nail each take, and then to the point where you get the written dialogue in the first two takes, and then following anything else we do after that is improv, and it's one and solid improv each time. And so it was really easy to write for Kevin because I knew whatever I threw at him, he was going to take and make it 1,000 times better than I could imagine.
And I knew whatever he writes is merely a suggestion.
Speaking of kind of the suggestion angle of it, there are so many permutations of things that happen as Tyler kind of runs through everything in his head. How much of that was scripted versus kind of improv on the fly? Well,
the scenarios that are there are all scripted, really. Like the the idea of how this particular thing is going to go wrong was there already. So I don't want to take too much credit for being an incredible improviser or anything, because we have camera setups and you have to have like this is what's going to happen now, but within that structure, we were allowed a lot of freedom, and so that's that was I would say it's more written than it is improv, but we could only get to really fun improv-y stuff because the structure was so well laid.
There's a scene in there with a lot of lovemaking, and a lot of the lines that Kevin says, I would say about 50-50 are improvised for like the big punchlines, because we got the structure to get to those punchlines, and then like Kevin throws in that little gem of a button at the last second, and generally we had to cut right afterwards because the whole cast and crew would break. There's a slight spoiler for the audience. There's a moment where there may or may not be flatulence, and we had to do that scene. That was probably the only scene where we had to do like 10 takes, because I couldn't stop laughing from the stuff that he was saying, which is great. So we're going to have a laugh reel, a blooper reel at some point.
We could just do that one. That'd be a good...
Yeah.
Because fart jokes are just funny. They just are.
What's it like as an acting exercise to have to kind of essentially reshoot the same thing over and over again to let different things happen, but still hit all the same beats?
Oh, it's fantastic, actually. As an actor, it's really, really freeing, because especially if you've got a scripted safety, that you can go back to. And then if you're comfortable with that, anything outside of that is just gravy, and so it's only fun. And it's amazing, and to have that kind of freedom on set is really rare. There's some projects where most projects are going to be like, these are the lines, you do them. And there might be a little bit of leeway inside it, but nothing like, when we have the kind of comfort with each other that we have, and the sense of freedom and the trust, you can go anywhere, so it's super fun.
Was there anything in particular that was difficult to shoot?
He has a better idea of that. Oh, I know exactly what he's going to talk about.
There was a particular day that was really rough because, let me start with, I want to set up everyone to win. As a producer, as a director, as a writer, I don't win. None of us win if I make it hard for everyone, if the conditions aren't great, if all of that is a struggle. Mm-hmm. And so I take it way more personally than I should when outside sources and influences come and affect my set. And the day that we filmed outside,
yep.
There happened to be an arsonist in the area setting fires to a bunch of things.
That's right.
And so there were a lot of sirens, more than normal, which stopped our takes. And the way that this film really thrived was by going through each scene in these setups and just barreling through it. And when we know our lines really well, we can do that. You can't do it, though, when there's a siren every 5 seconds or a helicopter or a plane. And so that day was a bit rough for me as far as, like, feeling frustrated for everyone, even though I think I was the most frustrated out of anyone. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone else was really that bothered because we still won the day, and then...
Yeah, we still made the day and everything, but I would say that was my hardest day on set, too, just because of the tension I saw that it was creating for him. And essentially, and
truth be told, I'm really glad that I had that rough day with Kevin, because Kevin knows how to diffuse the situation really well. So he's able to notice that it's getting rough, and he's able to be like, "Hey, I'm going to say something funny, and then maybe you'll laugh a little, and it'll be great."
Also, Jason has kind of an outsized idea of how awful he's being sometimes, because like at the end of a day he'll be like, "I'm sorry, I was such a horrible person today," and I'm like, you gave me side-eye once. The extent of your of any behavior toward me, and so he has an internal sense of how he's being, but that doesn't always translate. He's always still such a kind, generous, sweet person, and so even though he doesn't know that, sometimes that that angst and that anger almost never translate as fully as he thinks it does.
The only other time on set that I feel was a little challenging for me, which was kind of interesting, was on day one. We had to jump right into the giant scene that Shane and Tyler have towards the end of the movie, where my character cries a little bit. And I did not know that I could cry on command until that day. But I commanded him, and he did it. It started, well, we were filming Kevin's side of the scene first, and I started getting teary, and everyone kept being like, save those tears, don't cry. And I was like, I can't help it, it's just happening.
Was that day one?
It was day one.
Lord.
And we managed to get one of my favorite shots in the movie, which is, they framed me so beautifully, where you see one tear fall from my eye, and I'm really happy with it because it's cinematically beautiful and you can actually see it. And I'm like, whoa. But it was challenging because I was worried that I was going to use up all my tears when we were on Kevin, because I was really feeling the scene and I want to give 100% when I'm acting with everyone, no matter what, because they deserve as much of a performance from me as when it's on my turn, and you want to support your fellow actors. Mm-hmm. And so there was a little bit of nerves from me in the sense of like, oh, I hope I can keep it. And it worked out.
It worked out just fine, because anytime I'd see he was like losing or something, I'd just remind him of the 2016 election, and then
That's enough to get waterworks in many people.
Yeah.
I know.
We were both weeping at the end.
Speaking of some of the challenges you faced, what is it like doing a low-budget comedy on what I assume is a very short schedule?
It is tough if you don't plan ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And my amazing cinematographer, Naisha, basically mapped out the movie with me, alongside me, so that she could understand what shots I was looking for as a director and how I wanted the angles to look and how the story to go. And because we did that, we knew what shots we needed, and then we knew what shots we dreamed of. And so if we were ahead of schedule, we could get the dreamed of shots. If we were behind, we knew we would just get the ones we needed and we keep moving. And with the exception of like certain scenes that it's really important to tell the story to get this thing. Like there's a moment outside at the restaurant in the day, and there's a shot where Kevin puts his hand on mine, and it's very important for the kind of feel the romance building between the two main characters. And so that was a shot that was a necessary shot. But sometimes you're like, it would be cool to have, someone itching their arm just because it's interesting for this moment, or nervous hands. And it's like, we don't have time. Let's just move forward. We can lose that. But because she helped me map it out, and because everyone on set came to play, mm-hmm. we actually ended early every day, which is unheard of. And I'm so
got
proud.
Most of the dream shots too.
And got most of the dream shots. I think even
And what was the 10 days?
It was 10 days, and
10 days of full photography.
If I hadn't injured my back on day one, which required our amazing all-star makeup artist Sherry to paint my back to look like skin every day.
Hold on. He wasn't injured, okay? He got scratched.
No, it was a giant bruise.
Wasn't that bad?
Giant bruise. But it looks like someone beat me, and I'm like, we can't have Tyler looking like someone just beat him. Like, different movie. And so basically, she had to paint me, like, give me full body makeup every day.
Of course, sometimes people write movies themselves where they're not shirtless in every scene, but,
It was very liberating. And but we actually, if we hadn't had to do a slight retake of one of the things, just because there was a light / makeup slight snafu where the lighting hit the makeup in a way that changed the color, it was like 1 or 2 shots. We possibly could have finished in 9, which is just, I'm so proud of this cast and crew. Like they are all stars.
We are.
What are your favorite moments in the film for both of you? So
without spoiling too much, I'm just going to say that the words Danny Boy. that particular moment where Kevin and Danny Boy collide is a favorite. And then there's another moment towards the end where Kevin flips me off a couple times while Irish step dance music happens.
Yeah.
And those two moments just they're right up there with kind of the comedy stuff. I think my favorite romantic moment is when Kevin puts his hand on mine in the restaurant that first time. It's a very tender romantic moment, and I get gushy when I see romances like that. So
my favorite moments are all in my favorite moments are really all in the not, I don't want to say flashbacks, but the imagination parts where things go terribly crazy, and there's a lot of them for me that I had such a good time filming. And also it's that situation where, you know a joke that's coming, but you like the joke. So when the joke happens, you're even more happy that it just happened, even though you knew exactly what was going to happen. So I watched the movie, and that happens a lot. I'm like, oh, this is the scene where, oh, it just happened. So I have a really good time watching the movie.
Nice. Jason, you're such a multi-hyphenate on this movie. How did you keep your sanity? Like during the shooting days where you had all these hats to wear, prepared director, prepared actor, executive producer.
I disagree with the premise of your question. That he kept his sanity.
Well, you have to assume that I'm sane to begin with, because anyone who's sane probably wouldn't jump into the ring with that many hats on. But honestly, if it wasn't for, I know I keep pounding the drum of being grateful to the amazing cast and crew. But if it wasn't for the cast and crew, specifically my dad and Matt, who basically wore 7 hats just like me, we would not have been as successful as we had been. I had my dad basically acting as my eyes while we were filming, so we could keep moving along and basically watching the monitors to see the shots and making sure that the acting was on par, because I know I feel good about it, and and I can tell that Kevin's doing good because I'm really good at acting with people and knowing that they're nailing it. But that means that I'm not necessarily knowing if I'm nailing it. And then I also tend to be a harsher critic of myself, so it's good to have his eyes on there. And then my husband was transferring the data from the cards to the computer to the hard drives while cooking the meals for everyone and doing all the paperwork for SAG and handling payroll and handling contracts.
And constantly saying, no, Grace, we're not going into Grace.
And making sure we're following the rules and not going into overtime and when, except for when we plan for overtime, and really nailing it. And it's
calling safety.
Yeah. And and truthfully, the two of them are all-stars as well.
Yeah.
Now, I would be remiss not to point out that there is a cameo in this film, actually a couple cameos, for my very own book, Tracker Hacker.
Yes, Tracker Hacker, yes.
Now, you took a lot of care with building the background for this movie. I don't think we actually mentioned that Tyler is a young adult novelist in the film. And you've actually populated a lot of actual books for the set, track those down. And beyond that, you even, I remember like seeing your Instagram feed of you made paintings and you made things to go in the background. And
oh, you have no idea. The house right now, like behind us in the house right now, is completely decorated for Halloween because the next movie takes place in Halloween time.
Right.
So there's bats and paintings and felt and ghosts made out of felt and a whole I think there's a dead guy in the front, and he got an actual dead guy. He killed a man so that he could have him in a coffin, and he's rotting now to be prepared for he's very prepared.
He's very prepared.
Yeah.
Why was it important for you to get all of the books into the background like you did, instead of, that could have been one thing that probably nobody would have noticed if they hadn't been there?
Yeah, so one of my pet peeves with indie filmmaking is that the world doesn't look real. And I don't fault the filmmakers for what they have the rights to or what they can get the rights to and all that stuff and what they can do, but I encourage indie filmmakers to really pay attention to those tiny details, because the tiny details make the world feel real. Mm-hmm. So having books that exist in the real world and look professional, such as a very good book, you should go out and read it and buy it and all that stuff. Paintings in the walls, photos on the walls, tiny details.
The photos was a big thing too for him. Well, also, like books, you might not like, you'd have to be a really dedicated viewer, but right, books follow the characters, and we are like, we could be at different parts of the book depending on where we are, and there's a different arrangement of books, but there's a new one. The one I was reading earlier in the movie is now toward the bottom of the pile because I'm now on this other thing. I'm like, they were incredibly detailed about that stuff. Plus photos. Like we did a photo shoot together, mm-hmm. But as the characters became more in relationship, more photos showed up around the house. Yeah. So that was very cool, or like a frame that was already there would get replaced with photos of us instead of the photos that used to be in it. Yeah. And things like that. So it was a lot of little really detailed ways, especially because we had so few sets, right. And a very small cast. So like movies that are like that are very static sometimes, and you don't have a sense of the passage of time. And I think that this film works really, really hard to have that, and it makes a big difference,
Yeah, and that's it. One of the things that I really wanted to do, and Kevin mentioned this just now, is basically Shane moves in with Tyler. And when people move in together, they bring their stuff. And it's not like you wouldn't just be like, I'm moving in with you, but I'm going to just keep all your stuff and we'll put all my stuff in storage. Mm-hmm. They swap things out. They figure out which furniture set fits best. And obviously, we didn't change a lot of the furniture, but I was able to change the bedside tables. I was able to change a bunch of photos. And one of the things I tried to do is Shane is a ray of light in Tyler's life. And so I used the color yellow with Shane. And when he moves in, a lot of yellow starts to pop up on the set.
And he would do that in book covers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there were some book covers that had yellow that I specifically kept near Shane, or I had him reading and things like that. Yeah, mm-hmm. I'm really grateful for all the books and all the authors that provided us with books, because it really does make the world feel real. I mean, a young adult author would be reading other young adult author books and other books in general, because you want to see what's out there. You're going to want to get inspired.
Well, writers are readers too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the best way for listeners to keep up with all things happening with Analysis Paralysis and the future projects?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So basically the best place to go is tinyletter.com/mypethippo to join our newsletter. And basically, we're going to be sending out newsletter updates about where you can find Analysis Paralysis playing next, and when we get distribution, what streaming sites it'll be on, when we go live on Amazon in the future, or iTunes and all that good stuff.
It'll all be there.
Yeah.
Can you say that again? tinyletter.com.
Yeah, tinyletter.com/mypethippo.
Cool. And we'll put that in the show notes too, just to make that easy for everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Kevin and Jason, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about Analysis Paralysis. We love the movie. We're excited that more people are going to start to get to see it in the coming weeks and months. And we look forward to having you back on the show in just a few weeks to talk more about Out of Body, which we've mentioned a little bit about, plus the podcast you guys co-host called The Bright Side.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
For detailed show notes and links to everything discussed in this episode, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com. New episodes are available every Monday at all major podcast distributors. You can also find us on YouTube. I'm Derek McLean. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.